Right, I promised myself I wouldn't get angry about this one. I've learned some breathing exercises, so here goes.
For me, it's The Undertaker versus Roman Reigns in that dreadful all-time worst. Is it the all-time worst main event? It's in the conversation for sure. A miserable match on every single bloody level. It was the starkest showing of The Undertaker's mortality that we've ever seen. Age catches everyone, and it was abundantly clear as this man who so many people had adored for decades and decades and decades looked genuinely lost, at times well off the pace, completely uncoordinated, a sloppy mess of a performance, an understandable one. He's old, he's beaten up, he shouldn't have been hung out to dry in that spot regardless. But also, the other failing of this, and what makes it such a travesty, is that it came kind of at the height of the let's make Roman the guy phase, which didn't work for 5 straight years of trying to make this guy the top babyface. They were like, okay, well, we'll have him beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania, even though The Undertaker's streak is already gone, so it doesn't really mean all that much. And then it means even less when he gets in there, and he can't carry The Undertaker. He was useless at this stage in his career. He gets in there and they have this all-time slop fest, and then what really compounds it, however, is the post-match, which is the biggest taking the piss out of your audience retirement tease. You've all seen it. He breaks character, he goes to ringside, he greets Michelle McCool, leaves his boots, his jacket, his hat, all of that stuff in the ring. He's done it, The Undertaker's finally retired, sailed off in the sunset. Except he didn't, because he was back for Raw in the bloody Manhattan Center a month or like half a year later or whatever. It was a shambles. And look, Undertaker, not my favorite dude in the world, but Graveyard Dogs, awesome. Yeah. That came after this. Boneyard, lots of fun, right? He did some good stuff before finally getting that weird retirement ceremony. But this main event was the worst thing in the world. You agree with me, Michael Hamflett, because you wrote an article about this.
They call me Michael Shitflett. I say all that in an article, what you just said, and they call me Michael Flint. And somebody else called me Michael Ham Just go and clap, thank you, when he took his jacket off. I had to clap when people take the jacket off in Magic Mike XXL.
And people wonder why we don't have a comment section on the website anymore. You did this.
One of the biggest WrestleMania travesties for me personally, and I'm not even like a big Sting mark or a big WCW watcher at all, but the way that they used Sting in WrestleMania's 31, I think it was absolutely awful. You know the one, him against Aluminum Terminator himself, Triple H. Sting's debut was cool. After that, it just kind of became a mess immediately. Sting was doing his vigilante thing, and Triple H and the Authority were obsessed with the idea that Sting was upset about the fall of WCW 20 years later. It was like two people in a feud with their backs together shouting at, opposing walls. Just none of it connected. And of course the match at WrestleMania itself was a complete mess. We had run-ins from the New Age Outlaws and the NWO, despite the fact that it didn't make sense for the NWO to be there and to stand up for Sting, for his character, for their character. But of course this was about WWE versus WCW, which is why Triple H got to have his say in the invasion angle, which he missed 20 years prior, as did Sting, by burying Sting in his first ever WWE match and his first ever WrestleMania appearance. Should have been a triumphant thing, the icon finally coming to the grandest stage of them all, and instead WWE turned it into yet another round of look how cool we are. Pretty awful stuff. And to make matters worse, of course, Sting's WWE run was disappointing, short-lived. Everyone wanted the Undertaker match. I know the Undertaker didn't particularly care, but come on, money's right there. And meanwhile on the card you have Undertaker pointlessly going over Bray Wyatt the year after the streak was broken. He just comes back to, squash the new supernatural guy. WrestleMania 31 was a thing, wasn't it?
Right, I promised myself I wouldn't get angry about this one. I've learned some breathing exercises, so here goes. Shayna Baszler losing to Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. So let me take you back a few months back. Shayna Baszler has the greatest performance in the Elimination Chamber ever. She eliminates literally every single person, including Asuka, right? She's on the road to WrestleMania. And, this year WrestleMania goes Hollywood, and there was a Hollywood-esque tale to that WrestleMania match because Becky Lynch, the man, had become big-time Bex. She had literally become Rocky in Rocky 3, where all the excitement and distractions outside of wrestling made her take her eye off the ball, and the Clubber Lang in this scenario was Shayna Baszler, who, despite a weird sort of vampire stage immediately after the Royal Rumble, was very focused on beating her for the title. Yes, you did. Blood and guts. And we get to the match, and genuinely, I was watching this for Whatculture, and I was just like, feet up, here we go, let's see the coronation of Shayna Baszler then. And they used the finish that they used just every time to get out of a Shayna Baszler loss in NXT, which was, she's an idiot. She can't work out that when she's trying to do a submission, but both her shoulders are on the mat, then she should probably let go of the submission. And she got pinned, and I was quite annoyed, to be perfectly honest, because it didn't make a lick of sense to me. And it was exacerbated somewhat by, subsequently, Becky Lynch not being involved, really, outside of a few title defences that were kind of subsequently explained. She was pregnant, of course. And she literally just handed the belt to Asuka, who had the Money in the Bank briefcase. And that made me think, especially because so many people have said, oh, Becky Lynch really, sticks up for me backstage and she was important. Bianca Belair saying that she should go over at WrestleMania. Why didn't you do it for f***ing Shayna Baszler then? She was pissing off to have a kid. I'm very happy for her and Seth Rollins, by the way. But she was pissing off to have a kid. She's facing someone who was basically like undefeated, this killer from NXT who said, oh, I can't f***ing think to let go of a f***ing submission. So instead, I'm gonna get rolled up and then I'm just gonna do nothing after time with Nia Jax, and then you're just going to hand the belt over because you're pregnant. So yeah, I thought it was somewhat of a travesty.
Now, this one is a tough one because there's been an awful lot of travesties that have gone down in the history of WrestleMania. It's almost part of the reason that you buy a ticket, really, is it? Because you know something crazy and something controversial is going to go down. But for me, I think it's pretty hard to look past what happened to Bayley at WrestleMania 37. I was gutted for her. I know I wasn't the only one. There was an awful lot of us that were just sat there going, what? That's what you're doing with Bayley? The lockdown queen, the role model of all role models. She'd had this stellar year. She'd had that epic rivalry with Sasha Banks, and we saw what happened with Sasha after that. She had the epic match with Bianca Belair in the main event of WrestleMania 37 Night 1, whereas Bayley was like a guest host of sorts who just kind of like was rubbing shoulders with everyone backstage, and then eventually got battered by the Bellas in one of the first events back in front of live fans as well. So it was this huge thing. Everyone was like, oh, there's Bayley. We've wanted to cheer you and say how awesome you've been for so long. Here you are. And what's going to happen? Is Becky Lynch going to suddenly return? That was one of the big rumours at the time. Is Becky going to come out and you're going to stare off and maybe have an impromptu match? Is that where we're going? No. That's not where we're going. Instead, we're going to get the Bellas, who can't have a match at this point because they're just not ready to do so. And instead, they're just going to whoop your ass down the ramp, and you're going to be made to look like an absolute loser, an absolute geek on the grandest stage of them all. Bayley got done dirty, and hopefully this year, by the time this is recorded, a match with her and Trish Stratus has been announced, and it's one of the biggest things that happens on the WrestleMania card because Bayley got done absolutely horrendously here and on this match and on this night. Not this match, she didn't even get a match. She just got beaten up by Bellas. God, it just frustrates me, makes me angry, makes me blood boil even to this day.
The biggest travesty in WrestleMania history for me is Triple H taking 23 seconds, I've counted it several times, 23 seconds to pin Booker T to bring to an end a storyline in which Triple H expressly said on television that people like you don't get to be world champion. If you had to tell the story, if you could vaguely justify that story, which I don't even think is a means to an end, was particularly good, sophisticated storytelling, okay? If you were insisting on telling that story, there was literally only one ending. They did the other ending, and they took 23 seconds. I will never get over it. Like, I don't think WWE is a particularly nice organization. obviously, there are countless things in the promotion's history that lead me to that cynical conclusion, where you don't even have to be cynical about it.
Yeah.
That is staggering to me to this day. Why tell that story? Like, why be so horrible? Why alienate so many fans with that? Why would you take 23 seconds to pin Booker T? It's unfathomable to me that they would do something so mean-spirited, something that portrayed them in such a horrible light, something that is just gross. They sent a message that I've never been able to shake in my head about the values of that organisation. They've done worse, realistically, if you go through the history. But something about that I just found... What was the intention? Was it to make Triple H like the uber heel, to eventually put over somebody else, to really get the heat on Triple H? Like, it seems uglier and deeper than that to me, because if they were going to do that, surely they would break your heart. Surely they would have Booker T come agonizingly close. It just felt so much uglier than that. 23 seconds to put him in his place after that televised build. Disgusting, genuinely disgusting. WWE Wrestlemania is sold on the idea of magic and on the idea of the impossible happening, and this big unifying experience that sort of drive in every single professional wrestling fan. That was the opposite of WrestleMania magic. If there's an anti-moment in this great canon of WrestleMania, that is it.
Biggest WrestleMania travesty in history is not even... why is there even other entries on this list? If all the other Whatculture guys haven't said this too, I'm going to have to go and find them and have a bit of a word. But we go back to WrestleMania 17. We go back to the gimmick Battle Royal, one of the greatest matches of all time. Don't forget the Iron Sheik is still... No, I think the Iron Sheik arrived at the ring, right? Wasn't it WrestleMania 38, which we've now had? Bless Bobby Heenan. But Repo Man was in that thing, and he didn't win. And I actually think that's the last time that we saw Repo Man on WWE television. What is the flubbing deal? Now, I talk about Repo Man a lot, and people say, oh, he's just being quaint, he's just being funny. No, I'm not. I'm being damn serious. I love the Repo Man. I'm going to tell you why. For starters, what an amazing thing wrestling is when you can go from being in demolition to being the Repo Man. There's not many other industries that are going to let you do that, but also it sums up what sports entertainment is. Somebody went, well, actually it was a collaboration between Barry Darsow and Vince McMahon, and they had a chat, and they're like, why don't we, given it was the era of having a job and being employed in something else, even though you were a wrestler, don't worry about it. Why don't we have someone that goes around and repossesses things? Now, it didn't make any sense, because he wasn't repossessing things, he was just stealing stuff, especially from the Macho Man Randy Savage. But that's why I liked it. I was like, this sums up how fun wrestling can be. This sums up how goofy it can be. And this just goes to show that not everything has to be so damn serious, because it is just a bunch of people rolling around in their pants. And of course, it can have a hard edge to it, not Adam Copeland, but also it can just be fun. It can just be entertaining. And I remember even when I was a kid, I was like, Repo Man sums that up for me, and therefore he'd always had a special place in my heart, which is why when I got to meet him and tell him that, and he was genuinely happy, I was like, see, it's these small things, and I bet you have your own character too, be it from 5, 10, 15, 25 years ago, that makes you feel the same way. So he should have won that WrestleMania 17 Battle Royal. It's horrible that no one thought that he should do this. Don't forget the Iron Sheik did win it just because nobody was able to throw him out the ring because he was so damn broken, and I'm never going to let it lie. It's 2023 now. We'll get to 2024. I'm still going to be talking about it. I want Repo Man back in the WWE. It can just be a one-off. That's fine. I don't care. But there's no reason not to do it now. Although saying that, given that these are WrestleMania videos, main event, WrestleMania 40, Repo Man versus Roman Reigns. Look it.
Nothing much, really. Just when Hulk Hogan broke the heart of an 8-year-old boy and made him question every single thing about the world. Does that feel like a travesty? I don't know. Hogan returned to WWE in 1993 because Brutus Beef got his face smashed in by Money Incorporated. Why couldn't he have just dealt with that? Why did he have to get in the way of my hero's WrestleMania night? And for that matter, my hero's opponent's WrestleMania big night. Bret Hart and Yokozuna had this great feud. Yokozuna was the first Royal Rumble winner to get the shot at WrestleMania, and he was potentially going to win the title unless Bret could stop him. But these were new guys. Bret the Hitman Hart had become a hero to, well, not quite millions, unfortunately, but hundreds of thousands this is why it all happened. Hundreds of thousands of new wrestling fans that remained in place after Hulk Hogan had disappeared. He was teaching us how to understand the magic of it all, rather than Hulk Hogan, who was just all about bombast and taking your vitamins and looking...
Racism.
Yeah, looking leathery and all the other things that Hulk Hogan apparently provided. And then there he was, turning up at the end of the show. I've since had this conversation with a lot of people of a similar age to me about this period. It felt like for the first time you weren't getting what you wanted from a show designed to give you what you wanted. I didn't realise this as a young lad, but it was teaching me about wrestling politics the hard way. There was no reason why Bret Hart, or for that matter, Yokozuna, the villain of this piece, didn't leave WrestleMania with the WWE title, other than the reason that we couldn't see on screen. Hulk Hogan appeared one more time on camera with the WWE title in WWE, and that was to lose it to Yokozuna. Bret never even got his rematch, and Hogan flitted off to Japan to call that belt a toy and a trinket. I hate him, and I'm not over it. And this is a reminder of that, and I maybe never will be.
Got to see Bobby Heenan on a camel though, so...
Yeah, I'm done.
Randy Savage not being able to have his own spotlight at WrestleMania 4. Now, this was the WrestleMania where the vacant WWF World title was on the line in a tournament that took place right across through WrestleMania. So you had in the first round, you had Savage went through Butch Reed, then he went through former Intercontinental Champion Greg the Hammer Valentine, then he went through the monstrous one-man gang to land himself a match in the final against the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. Now, DiBiase had got there because he'd had a bye in his semi-finals because Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan went to a double DQ in a quarter-final match. So finally, it looked like the Macho Man was going to get his moment. This is a Randy Savage who had come into the company as a hated heel, had won the Intercontinental title, was despised by the masses, but now was beloved, and they were ready. The crowd was ready to get behind Savage as their guy, the guy. And this was the first WrestleMania where Hulk Hogan was not involved in the main event as a competitor. Of course, this is where things go awry because Andre the Giant being at ringside for the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, Miss Elizabeth being in the corner of Randy Savage, Liz goes to get Hulk Hogan to nullify the threat of Andre the Giant. But it would be one thing if Hogan was just there to thwart the nasty giant, the big stinking giant as he always called him. But instead, Hulk Hogan gets involved in the finish in a very heel maneuver, which is commonplace for Hulk Hogan back then, even though he was the babyface, where Hulk hits DiBiase with a steel chair in the back while he's got the sleeper hold locked in. The referee's distracted. Macho Man then gets the elbow drop, the 1-2-3, and is the new WWF World Champion. But Hogan even then isn't done because he rushes outside, gets the vacant title, takes it out of the really nice bag it's in, his presentation bag, and gives it to Randy Savage, celebrates with him, poses in the ring as WrestleMania goes off the air. Why couldn't you just let Randy Savage have that moment? Him and Miss Elizabeth could have just shared the ring together. No Hulk Hogan. Even if you want to get to the Mega Powers at WrestleMania 5, just why couldn't Savage have had the clean win? And it's no wonder that when Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan feuded, a lot of fans did actually side with the heel, the bad guy Randy Savage. Travesty, mate. Absolute travesty. Right.